I don't care what you're welding on or what you're welding with, every beginner makes these 7 mistakes. Mistake number 1 is burning up your gear. I think I've seen pretty much every new welder when I was an instructor. After about 2 or 3 weeks, they all look like Temu firefighters that just all came out of a burning building. Their hood has got a bunch of soot on it with like a melted clear lens. Their gloves, one looks okay, but the other one's all like burnt up and crispy. Looks like that fella's hand from Scary Movie.
I better use my strong hand.
It's kind of comical because it really is avoidable. I'm going to quote my good buddy Terry here. If you don't want to get burned, keep the fire on the metal and off of you. Not messing up your welding hood is kind of an easy one. Just don't put your face so close to your weld. I've literally burnt up a $400 welding hood just from putting my face too close to it. Literally just melted the clear lens and ADF, the whole 9 yards. Just step to the side. Again, lean the head over to where you can see more. Try to get comfortable, all that good stuff. Same thing when it comes to your welding torch. It doesn't matter if you've got your MIG gun here or you got your stick stinger. If you're choking the chicken, and I say that because that's what I was told whenever I was coming up, welder be like, why are you choking that chicken? Your hands are really close to the fire of this torch. Every pro will pull their hands back. They'll get their hands away from the business end of this torch because that's where all the fire is, right? Remember, there are no style points in the weld shop. Avoid frayed clothing at all costs. I know that y'all want to keep wearing them because it's a good shirt. It's lasted a while, but once it gets a fray or tear in it, that's just an open invitation for a spark to catch you on fire. I know that FR gear is expensive and you're already burning up your clothes. You don't want to burn up your FR gear. A 10,000 degree BB doesn't care if it's FR or not. It's going to put a hole in it. The biggest difference between FR and non-FR is FR is going to be able to extinguish itself. If you get caught on fire, you get a burn, that fabric, when it starts to burn, it puts itself out. It doesn't spread. Whereas even if you're wearing denim or 100% cotton stuff, when a fire hits and it starts to burn those fabrics, it'll spread. Go to a Goodwill and buy you some thrift store clothes and then starch the ever-living snot out of it and you're practically bulletproof, or DIY FR. Now, as far as the top of my head, I feel naked without my welding cap. I know some of y'all think they may look goofy, but they absolutely serve a purpose. Keeps the sweat out of your eyes, your hood feels a lot more comfortable on your head, and this little goofy flap that people think is funny looking is meant to cover your ear hole. You're going to want it because it only takes one of them BBs to sizzle its way down to your brain for you to be like, I'm going to get something to cover up my head. That's just my personal opinion. Now, outside of needing a personal fire watch, I've seen a lot of newbies struggle with not being able to see, which is kind of a big problem, right? The first thing I'm going to do when someone says, I can't see what I'm doing, is I'm going to take a look at their hood. First, look at that clear lens. I think a lot of newbies don't realize that these clear lenses, they're consumables. Whenever they were supplied to me, I had to replace them at least every other day. Depends on how much welding you're doing, but you need to replace both sides of it, or however many your welding hood needs. I know it sounds really silly, but you got to peel the plastic off both sides of the lens. Now, sometimes they've got like lettering or numbers to where you know that there's something on that side, but it's like looking through like one of those privacy shower glasses or so. It's very fuzzy if you don't take off those plastic coverings off your clear lens. I can't tell you what wonders it does when you just simply swap out a clear lens. I mean, you could tell the difference clear as day that it's way easier to see what you're up to with just simply swapping out some plastics. Let this be your sign. Change your clear lens. Now, if those clear lenses, they look pretty new, then I'm going to take a look at what shade you have on there. Now, when we're welding, we want to be operating somewhere between like a 10, maybe even a 13. I think it's pretty dark. If your hood has multiple shades, like this one will go down into 9 and even have a cut and a grind mode, you're not going to see too good on that grind mode. I've seen students do it, not have that hood on, or they don't have it on set on the right setting. We want to make sure that the hood is on at least a 10. We want the sensitivity to be really high. If it's flashing on you a lot, you can maybe turn it down. And that delay doesn't need to be super duper long, but maybe just halfway. And you should be right in the money for what you need as far as a welding hood. It's a preference. I've seen welders say, oh, that's too bright or that's too dark, and they're working on the exact same thing. Even over time, that preference might change. Now, if I can't fix your body positioning, can't fix the welding hood you have, all of these things are failing us and you still can't see, I'm going to ask you straight up, do you need prescription glasses? Have you ever got your vision checked? The other thing you can do if your face is too close is you can put magnifying lenses into your welding hood. So they actually have inserts for your hood no matter what shape or size. If you feel like you always want to be close, but you need to get your head further back, get you a magnifying lens. Now, before I go elaborating on how to read a puddle, I want to talk about numbers number 3 on the list, which is fairly controversial because a real welder will tell you, you ain't a real welder unless you weld that overhead vertical down, upside down on your head, 3 inches off the ground in a convection box underwater. Yes, you are going to be put in situations where you're going to have to weld it where it lies, if you will. So you most certainly need to be prepared and practice for welding in all positions and all that good stuff. But let me give you some advice from someone who doesn't like having to work harder than they have to. If the company you're testing for or you're a student in a weld lab, if they're not going to put you in a box, don't force yourself to weld in a box. Put that coupon in position, put it exactly where you want it. If it's in a tough spot, move it. I've seen students take weld tests and even do competitions where they're like, I was having a hard time because the coupon kept moving on me. You have a welding machine. Weld it. And then you know the ABCs, always be comfortable. Try to get at least 3 points of contact, a foot, an arm. Make sure you're able to do your dry runs up and down. Make sure you're able to make it from point A to point B without getting hung up. A good clamp is always a good option for a third hand as a point of contact so you can clamp it to something. If you don't have a clamp, use something. Use something to get that third point if you can. That crescent wrench can be fine. You got it now. Now you're ready to rock and roll. Now, number 4 literally translates to any one of the welding processes that you might be doing, and that's how to properly read your puddle. Most beginners are like a moth to a pretty light. As they're welding, they're just staring right into that arc. If you can read that puddle, it'll straight up tell you everything you need to know. It'll tell you whether you're welding too hot or too cold. You need to be adjusting your arc length closer or further back. It'll tell you that you need to speed up or change your work or travel angles, all of those things if you're watching your puddle. You're trying to form a puddle, make it a certain size and shape, and then carry that puddle from one side over to the other, making that same size and shape. My good buddy Scott Robbie would always say you have 3 seconds to change something while you're watching your puddle if something starts to go wrong. So as you're welding and you see something going wrong, you have 3 seconds trying to fix or change something. If it doesn't work, stop welding. Stop welding right now or you're going to just make it worse. Now, while reading your puddle can help you change the way your weld will look while you're welding, a good welder needs to know how to interpret and see the weld after it's done and make adjustments. A good welder needs to know all the discontinuities that could happen to a weld and how to adjust and fix them. Matter of fact, let's start by rattling off some discontinuities. We got porosity, almost always going to be a gas issue. Maybe you've got some dirty wire, dirty metal. Then you have lack of fusion. Lack of fusion is where you don't get those pieces of metal to fuse together properly. Could have been you had your machine on the wrong polarity. If it was too cold, it's definitely not going to fuse together. Then you got overlap. Overlap is when you see that bead, usually on a 2G weld, somewhere where that bead rolls and kind of sags. It has a big old belly on it. You could be putting the bead in just the wrong place, or maybe you're just welding too slow. That's overlap. Not to get confused with overfill. Overfill is whenever you have too much reinforcement, too much cap on it. That's like 1/8 of an inch. That's a lot. Don't go past 1/8 inch for pretty much almost everything. Worse than overfill is underfill, and that's when you have any part of your weld joint under the thickness of the base metal. Any spot. Could be tiny, tiny. If it's under, it's underfill, and they'll almost always call you on it. And then, of course, you got your undercut. Undercut could be because your travel angle or maybe your work angle was wrong. Maybe you're welding too slow. Maybe you're welding too fast. There's a whole lot of ways to get some undercut. Then you got your old slag inclusion. I always say nothing can live in hell, so you were probably welding too cold. This also could be improper fit up for your joint configuration, for the process you're using. Could be a push versus a pull issue. Could be that you're just too cold or you didn't do proper inner pass cleaning between your beads. You don't want to trap slag in a weld. Shout out to today's video sponsor, Ariat Workwear. You know what they say, if you want the part, you should dress the part. And I can pretty much tell you exactly what type of welder you are just by looking down at your boots. If you're wearing the green Ventec work hogs, you're probably a Boilermaker, you're probably a millwright, you're like the jack of all trades. You judge pretty harshly on every weld you see, but you still couldn't pass that pipe test. The Groundbreaker Steel Toe. This is your run-of-the-mill steel toe boot right here. You are probably a maintenance man or a farmhand, and you could weld pretty much anything with a stick rod. The Stunt Jumper Boa. You're most likely a MIG or flux core welder, for sure. You got more pockets on you than sense, but man, those boots are on there snug. Speaking of snug, the rebar lift 8-inch. You're definitely an iron worker, and I always say iron workers are so ornery because they got them laces too tight. The Sierra square toe. These have no steel toes, and this welder probably doesn't wear any PPE. Welding in a backwards cap with a cut-off shirt, no gloves, safety squints on, and a little bit of a cigarette hanging out their mouth. Stay away from those. Oh, how I love to explain number 6 to newbies, especially when they're getting comments on social media where it's like, oh, well, that weld isn't to code. I'm a better welder than you because I weld to code. Let me explain something. Forget the welding code. Fall back on numbers 4 and 5 that we just talked about and hone in on Jason Becker's mantra, make every weld better than your last. Welding code is the floor, kiddos. It's the bottom. It's the bare minimum it takes to work at wherever company or whatever code it is. Now, I understand welding code here is different than welding code there, and even the company man can supersede the welding code and make it even tighter tolerances for that to make it a really strict weld that it has to be perfect. But no weld is perfect, and that's why codes exist, because we have to hold at least some tolerances because we're not perfect as humans and as welders. When you have to weld to code, don't worry about the code. If you're making a solid, clean weld to the weld procedure that they have, you're cooking. I can't tell you how many, not only students, but graduates and even welders in the industry still can't read a WPS. Like this here. This is a WPS that Jason Becker wrote us for Maker Camp. At Maker Camp, there were a bunch of newbies that never seen one before, and to them, this was gibberish. It was very overwhelming, and it made it to where they were like, I don't think I could do that. Follow that WPS there. And it really is simple. That's why it's so important to learn like the technical terms for things and not just the slang terms for welding, because if you know how to read it, all it says is it wants 1/4-inch plates T-joint together, 5/16 weld size going uphill with MIG. You want to know what polarity to run? Right there. You want to know what settings you need as far as volts? Right there. You want wire feed speed? Right there. It's all written right here in the recipe, folks. This is the cookbook to make the weld. So if you're welding to your recipe for wherever you're working, it doesn't matter the code. Weld to the recipe, make the weld, and also make sure you're learning your weld symbols too, because they always go hand in hand. The final mistake that I think every newbie makes is just overthinking this whole thing. I've watched time and time again a student or someone who goes to test, they get stressed out, they get nervous, and then they bust their weld test because they just overthink it, and they've done it 100 times already. Just take a deep breath and remember, welding is just welding. These 7 things that we just talked about, if you can follow all things, it will directly translate to every process, every weld joint, and every metal that you come across. Until it ain't. All welding is like read a puddle, you can understand what you need, but there's going to be certain times where you're welding a really special thing. It's different. It's not the same. It's different. This is a lot more for your technical fabrication and welding of specialty alloys. You're going to have to further your education. You can't just stop in one spot. That's why it's so important to keep pushing with not only your welding skills, but with your welding education and knowledge. The moment you think that you know it all is the moment you quit learning. I hope that helps some of you noobs. Now go weld something.